A pattern has emerged in the comments on our recent videos, and it's too consistent to ignore. Many of you, the highly empathetic, the deep feelers, the supersensors, the so-called orchids, are also the ones who seem to attract the most damage from a very specific kind of person. You tell the same stories over and over again. Partners who twist reality until you start questioning your own memory. Friends who store your deepest secrets like weapons, waiting for the right moment to use them. Family members who push and push until you finally break, and then point at you and say, "See, you're the unstable one." And beneath every story is the same aching question. Why do they do this? Why don't they care how much they hurt me? We usually call these people toxic, manipulative, difficult, but psychology has a far more precise name for what you're dealing with. They possess what researchers call the dark tetrad of personality. And today, we're going to step inside their minds, not to excuse them, but to understand the rules of the game you were unknowingly pulled into. When you deal with a manipulative person, you make one dangerous assumption. You assume they are like you. You assume that if you explain your pain clearly enough, if you communicate better, if you show them how much they're hurting you, they'll feel it, and they'll stop. But research shows something unsettling. Their emotional hardware is fundamentally different. Psychologists have identified 4 traits that form this dark personality profile. The first is narcissism. Narcissism is deceptive because it often comes wrapped in charm. These people are frequently confident, charismatic, socially magnetic. They know how to light up a room. But this confidence is a shell. Underneath it is a fragile structure that cannot tolerate criticism, not even mild disapproval. Stop clapping and the mask slips. Challenge them and what emerges isn't sadness, it's rage. A cold, disproportionate fury that seems to come out of nowhere. The second trait is Machiavellianism. These are the strategists. While narcissists react emotionally, Machiavellians calculate, they plan, they wait. They don't see people as individuals with inner worlds. They see pieces on a board. If lying benefits them, they'll lie without hesitation. If betraying you serves a future goal, they'll do it patiently. To them, morality is optional, an inconvenience at best. The third trait is psychopathy. This is where fear and remorse disappear. Psychopathy is marked by impulsivity and emotional emptiness. These individuals lack the internal brakes that stop most people from harming others. Risk doesn't register the same way. Danger doesn't feel dangerous. Their amygdala, the brain's fear center, barely reacts. They chase stimulation, power, sensation, regardless of the cost to you. And the fourth trait, added more recently, is everyday sadism. This is the most disturbing one, because it explains cruelty with no strategic purpose. The mocking, the trolling, the subtle humiliations. For a sadist, your suffering is the reward. Watching you squirm triggers dopamine. Pain isn't a side effect, it's the point. At this stage, many empathetic people ask the hardest question of all. Were they made this way or born this way? And here is where reality becomes uncomfortable. Some of these traits are not trauma responses, they are biological. Twin studies and behavioral genetics show that psychopathy in particular has a massive genetic component, with heritability estimates as high as 70%. Some people are born with underactive fear circuits. They didn't learn to be fearless, they were wired that way. Machiavellianism, on the other hand, is often learned, a survival strategy forged in cold, unpredictable environments. Together, biology and environment create a personality structure that is extremely resistant to change. Now we arrive at the part that confuses people the most. If they don't feel empathy, how do they know exactly how to hurt you? And how can they be cruel one moment, then impossibly charming the next? It feels like a switch, and according to brain imaging studies, it is one. Empathy isn't a single system. It splits into two distinct processes. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand what someone else is feeling, to read the room, to predict reactions. Affective empathy is the ability to feel that emotion yourself. Most manipulative personalities have very high cognitive empathy. They read you with frightening accuracy. They know your fears, your wounds, your triggers, often better than you do. But their affective empathy is severely impaired. They know you're in pain. They just don't feel it. And here's the part that matters most. They can temporarily turn empathy on. During the love bombing phase, they mirror you perfectly. They feel familiar, safe, almost magical. But it's a performance. Once you're emotionally hooked, the switch flips off. Your emotions become data, information to be used for control. They're not looking for connection. They're looking for a target. And no, they didn't choose you by accident. Predators scan for signals: high empathy, high agreeableness, a tendency to forgive, a habit of self-blame. If you're uncomfortable taking up space, if asserting needs feels wrong, you are the perfect lock for their key. They test you early: a small boundary violation, a subtle disrespect. If you explain it away, if you apologize for their behavior, you pass, and the trap closes. They use intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful addiction mechanism known to psychology. Cruelty followed by charm, withdrawal followed by intense connection. Your nervous system becomes addicted to unpredictability. You stay hyper alert, always trying to earn back the version of them you met at the beginning. This isn't love. This is a trauma bond. Once the bond forms, dismantling begins. Gaslighting becomes the primary weapon, not just lying, but perspecticide, the slow death of your ability to trust your own perception. Over time, chronic emotional abuse alters the brain. Memory centers weaken, fear centers enlarge. You become anxious, foggy, unsure, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system is under siege. At this point, some people feel envy. I wish I could be that cold. I wish I could turn feelings off and win. Because society often rewards these traits. They look powerful, fearless, untouchable. But here's the truth no one tells you. They are emotionally disabled. They live on a hedonic treadmill, chasing bigger spikes of power and stimulation just to feel anything. They cannot access calm. They cannot access peace. They cannot experience the quiet joy of safety or trust. Every relationship is a transaction. They know the words, but not the music. So don't envy the machine. It runs fast, but it runs on empty. You've been trying to solve this with patience, with warmth, with communication, but you cannot fix a hardware problem with better software. You're playing for connection. They're playing for control. Understanding this is the spell breaker. When you stop projecting your empathy onto them, clarity returns. Their behavior says nothing about your worth. You weren't chosen because you're weak, but because you're valuable. And that light still belongs to you. This was the diagnosis. In the next chapter, we talk about distance, detachment, and reclaiming your nervous system. For now, just breathe. Knowing the truth is the first step towards freedom. I'll see you in the next one.